Today we would talk about just the different perspectives of these types of
Mhm.
projects. You've got really three groups or components to it. You have the emitter, these are your refineries and all the other things that emit CO2, and then there's the transportation component. Okay, you've captured those emissions. Now you're going to transport it to ultimately the injection site, and that's the storage component of it. So, we thought maybe Lauren, you could help walk us through that. I guess it all starts at the emitter, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And to be clear, under 45Q, it's the emitter who gets the either direct payment for 5 years or the investment tax credit for the remainder of the time. So there, it does start with them. You're exactly right, Brent. And really, they're the ones. They have the carbon, and this is largely addressing obviously point sources. So everything from ethanol plants to methanol plants, which those, by the way, have been the most economic so far because they have this really pure stream of CO2. So it's easy to capture. But it goes all the way up to like electric generating plants powered by natural gas, and everything in between. So chemical plants, so all the cement, steel, all of these things are point sources that emit CO2. And they have to decide, well, look, it does take a significant investment to be able to capture that instead of putting it into the air. And so the CCS starts with capture and putting in a process in place instead of having it go up into your flue stack and out into the atmosphere. Can you put some equipment in place to capture it? Then, of course, like you said, you got to transport it, and then you got to find some place to store it. And all those things have to come together. So the emitters, it really does start with them. It really does start with them doing the analysis of, is it going to be economical? Because, there are maybe some people who want to have a good public relations story about how they are contributing to the fight against climate change. But from what I've seen so far, the emitters are still driven by economics. And they
Oh,
still need to be
going away.
incentivized to do it.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't think it's
there's
going away.
no, no, no. I mean, they're at the end of the day, these companies are still there and they're accountable to their stakeholders, to shareholders specifically, to make money, and that's a part of it. And so what you see is there's this spectrum, as I mentioned, of some types of point sources are much more economical and easily fit under the $85. They're quote in the money right now. Ethanol is an easy one to do. Um, there are certain ammonia plants, especially that because they have this really high concentration of CO2, it's like almost changing the piping. You just move it from heading into the air to heading down to that pipeline, which takes it to the storage site. So much easier. And so it's the harder ones where the steel industries, the cement industries, where they have to really go through and do the economics analysis. And that's where I think it's going to be interesting to see how over time the capture technology, there's some really smart people working on, how do we enhance it? Again, the oil industry has been taking CO2 out of streams for a really long time. So you know, now what has the, how do we do that into other industries now? And so
Yeah.
they're really thinking about what does that look like, and what technology is there that's going to allow that to happen.
Yeah. Speaking about the technology, where does you hear a lot of conversation about, direct air capture. You hear that coming. Where does that where do you think that's going to go? Where do you see the best use case for that technology? I guess the question is where, what types of capture do you tend to see? You mentioned earlier there's some, it's just a matter of, in layman's terms, redirecting, right, and into your
Yeah.
pipeline. But what other forms of capture are out there?
Well, the exact technology to do it is variable. Some is chemical, some are involved. Most of it involves chemical, where you get certain solvents that will get the CO2 and then later have to take it away. And anyway, we won't get into a bunch of technology there. Some of it's membrane, but when you think about the various places, direct air capture is a can of worms because there are a lot of people out there that are violently against direct air capture. Right now, it is so expensive to capture. Think about it. It's 400 parts per million CO2 in the air right now versus orders of magnitude higher, even for the most, dilute electric power generation plant out there. So direct air capture, a lot of people are questioning the economics of that.
Yeah.
Now, in the in the IRA, direct air capture is like twice, maybe even 3 times as much economics incentive is there, as form of tax subsidies for direct capture. Even with that, that still is generally, most people say, until some technology changes, that's just not happening. Yeah. So then you're left with, well, all these other, plants throughout the U.S., whether it's chemical plants or whatever, are thinking about, well, how much is it going to cost us to not only capture it, but then transport it, and then also the storage operator is going to charge us some money too. So all of that has to meet an $85, which $85 is got to pay for all that and give a return, to make it worth the company doing.
Yeah, when you talk about the economics of that, I mean, the players, right, that you see in the storage game, at least is Dudley's exposure to it, because these companies who want to build these storage projects come to us, they need land capture. But the clientele that you see, and all of my peers in the industry, it's the majors. Any client that's hiring us to do this, most of the time, also you'll see them on refineries. So that
Right.
makes sense, right? It helps the bottom line economically for a large corporation that has a refining component, a downstream component, and an upstream, skill set to be able to develop these storage projects. So that makes a ton of sense.